Hey everybody, thanks for being here again. Next Chapter Real Estate. Today I have a really fun guest. Not my typical YouTube video, but I am doing more and more of these interviews and I think you'll love this guest. Her name is Leanne Pepper. We connected because I heard her podcast talking about her dad's passing, and before that she had to deal with the assisted living and emptying his house and just so much of what I do on a regular basis, and I was super intrigued and I became addicted to her podcast. So I'm really excited for you to meet her. So here we have Leanne Pepper. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Annie. Good to see you again. My new best friend.
Oh, I love it. I love these connections I make online and different Facebook groups and the podcasts that I'm just getting more obsessed with. And your podcast, Class Reunion, you're going to tell us more about it. But honestly, I keep messaging you. I'm like addicted. I think I've listened to almost all of them. So I'm going to be that person waiting for it to drop each week now.
I'm glad you enjoy my trauma.
Yeah. Well, it's so fascinating. And specializing in what I do with my real estate, I see so many, adult children having, kind of trauma from growing up, and now they're coming together to sell mom and dad's house, but they really kind of revert back to these patterns of being in high school, something that's been simmering with them their whole life. And I really love that your podcast kind of highlights a lot of, I wouldn't say highlight that, it's not depressing at all, but it's just like how people grow through some of those things. But anyway, I'm going to let you talk.
It's a perfect segue to why I started Class Reunion, because as you mentioned, I had my mother passed first, then my dad. And like all of us, we have interesting family dynamics. And so with my father being gone and my son living with his girlfriend, there's this reflection of like, wow, we just went through the last parent passing. And what does that make us? Like, how are we going to be redefined as a family? And all four of us reacted to my dad's passing differently. Same with my mom, because we have four different relationships. And there was something I heard along the lines of, you are raised by a different parent than your other sibling because of the age. So if you're the first, it was their first time being parents, right? So they're going to build a different relationship with you, whether it's overbearing or who knows, but that's an entirely different age that they were parents and their knowledge of being a parent. So you all have a different relationship. And I think once I recognized that and I saw it kind of unfolding with my dad, it made me want to reflect on my past that much more. And thus the Class Reunion, I thought I should really go back because of the wounds you say that a lot of people have when they bring him to the house.
Yeah.
And talk to that little girl again and just reminisce on the good, the bad, what I did or didn't know. And it's really been a great evolution of myself emotionally and physically. You'll see me from the first episode all bloated and uncomfortable. And I remember not really feeling my best, to now where I've made a lot of peace in sharing my story. And I have a ways to go with looking good, but I'm better off than I was a few months ago. And so I was like, wow, who else needs to kind of go through this journey of marrying the past with the present, right? And just making sure we're whole in our connections. And it's been really fun. Interviewing all of my classmates is what I've done. I've gone back and I started with my first kiss, my homecoming date, my first best friend. And reconnecting in those relationships has been really, really enlightening and fun.
It's fascinating because this is what I've said to you too, that I have like kind of seen my experience through your experiences. Because at first I thought, oh, the first kiss, would be kind of funny or whatever. But there was so much more in that conversation. But it was like both of you shared things about where you were then and where you are now that was relatable. And I thought, gosh, this is like probably so much of, the high school then to now, how people go through different things. And then, oh my gosh, I loved your episode talking about the different TV shows, from back then. And that was interesting because not every podcast episode is you interviewing someone from your past. Now you've interviewed other people,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. But then you've also done some of the solo ones, and like that TV show was breakdown was fascinating, and I loved it. And it was you're really good at breaking down your thoughts and I always walk away learning something. It's not, I happen to just love people's stories in general, but I actually really learned something kind of about myself too. So you're really good at it.
Oh, thank you. But we tend to forget because we're just so busy moving forward, right? And nothing's wrong with that, but we tend to forget, like, how was I raised and what were my thoughts and takeaways? And I've mentioned to you this many times before, and I say it a lot on my podcast. We were so void of any toolkit growing up and understanding the dynamics of friendships or families or teachers. You talked about impact of teachers because my best friend Nancy talked about something that a teacher had said that stays with you. We've just kind of forgotten that so much of that formulated who we were and are to this day. And to kind of unpack that again, this later in life it can either be a lot of fun, right? Because we talked about TV shows, which was fun, or very insightful where you do this self-reflection of, gosh, I had no idea I was carrying that in my life for so long, and to just recognize that we've got to let that go. And the trepidation that everybody has about going to a class reunion is real. And I think so much of it is you go back to that person again.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't, if I see Gregory, I don't want him to see me now. I've gained weight or whatever the case is, or they're successful. We're all going on an even playing field, which is we're here now. Thank you. We're
Yeah.
just healthy. We've lost a lot of classmates.
Yeah.
And so much of all of that we reacted to at high school was based on family dynamics. The class bully is not a class bully for no reason at all, right? There's things that none of us really probably knew about them, and they're not coming as that same person.
Right.
They're coming totally different, and we just need to celebrate where we're going to go on this next journey for the, remaining half and make it fun. I've learned that we all came from some storyline behind closed doors, and how we acted out about that is really universal. So as much as you think there's different groups of people, the popular, the person that drank and smoked too much or whatever, or the jock, the reality is we were all the same. We all really felt high school was difficult, and growing up is difficult. And so we all had the same trauma behind closed doors. And that's what I like to share. It's like, it's a level playing field, guys. Go back to your reunion as adults and just relive the good days and connect from here on out, because the pool of people we're going to have in our lives is going to shrink, right?
Oh my God, exactly. And it is interesting when you talk about your siblings having different relationships with each of your
Yes.
parents, but then also now the parents aren't there. Who's the glue that's keeping the family together? Because usually it's the mom or the dad that connects you all. And I find that a lot with my clients. There have been a couple of times with siblings that I really think, oh my gosh, I don't think they're ever really going to talk to each other because of, a little bit of past traumas, but then they live in different parts of the country and they're just not that motivated to keep that relationship alive. And I always kind of share with them, like, have that be part of your legacy for your parents, your parents' legacy, that they had you all as children. Like, you might not be best friends still, and you might have a lot of hurts, but stay in contact,
Yeah.
at least try that, because it's so sad to me, the disintegration of these families, that now they have no reason to stay connected. And it does take usually one sibling to kind of be the bigger person, to put the differences aside and say, you know what, we are in totally different places in our lives and have different views, but hey, you're still my brother or sister. I just wanted to reach out and say, how's it going? And I don't know how it's going for your family. How is it? Are you guys still in contact? And
Yes. And Annie, that's a great point. It is just like simple. How is it going? It doesn't have to be, remember that time that you did this and, da, da, da. We have a text chain called Sibs.
oh, cute.
And the leadership is where I think it shouldn't matter anymore. Definitely, I'm the youngest, but it doesn't mean my sister's running the text message. We all, oh, thumbs up there.
There you
We
go.
all take turns of just throwing little things out there, even if it's a meme. I mean, that's the easiest way to just
Yeah.
kind of start the conversation with something funny like that. I did Happy National Siblings Day. And of course, none of them knew it even existed. And so it was just funny going back and forth like that. It just lets the guard down of, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a heavy topic. It could be just something super funny, or taking a picture that was somebody that looked just like my dad that was sent to me. I mean, it was spooky. I spooky. And so I sent it to them, right? Like I said, I'm looking for his death certificate right now, just trying to be funny that, this guy could still be out there. And I think just anything that's off-putting that just is meant to be a funny little joke is a great way to start it. Just, it doesn't have to be anything relating to the past, just funny things where you are now. And we all have connected. And I'm sure my parents are shocked to no end that we've maintained it and we've actually become closer. I hate to say that. But we actually have become closer because we're not all living through our relationships with our parents separately and being judged by it. Some of us were closer with one or the other. And I think that's really common. And I think when they're both gone and you don't even have that tug of war, then you just learn to relax and fall back on your funny camping trips or little things like that. And it's funny, the stories that we've shared, it's 50-50. I will not know anything that they're talking about, and vice versa. I'll share a story, being the youngest, that they find hysterical because they don't remember that either. So
Oh, I love it.
it's been very healing and wonderful, and I'm thrilled we're doing it.
Yeah, I love to hear that you guys are, staying in touch. I don't even know your siblings, but just from my perspective, I just think you got it. It's so helpful. I just do
And
think.
people are having kids, and like we're now, my sister is a grandparent, and another one's just grandmother to two, and one more on the way. And I mean, we're all just doing great things with our kids, that it's not fair for those cousins to not be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so it. It's like the next generations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think is so great about your podcast. I was sharing with you that I talked to my brother yesterday, and
Yeah.
I was telling him, "Oh my gosh, you've got to listen to it." And at first he was like, "Well, I don't understand what is the topic."
Right.
Like she's talking to
I
people.
didn't go to her school. Why would I care?
Yeah, why do I really care about that? And I said, oh, because it's so relatable and it's funny to like hear what someone else was going through, but it also made me think about like, oh my gosh, I remember a teacher I had that was so similar to what your guest was just talking about. And
Mhm.
so in a way, I think it's helped even my brother and I have more to talk about. And we're pretty close and we do still have my parents, but it is just the two of us. And so I think we'll hopefully always stay close regardless of my parents, because we all don't live in one town. So um but I thought I'm always going to share your podcast moving forward with all my clients, the siblings, like,
Oh,
hey, just go listen, because it might stir a conversation up for their siblings. It's
yeah.
just
Think
like,
about concerts and musical influence.
yes,
We
yeah,
think we talked about that when we were talking. I've learned so much about my genre of music because I listened to the 70s. I listened to Carole King and The Who and a lot of bands that weren't my typical era. And so we relate, my siblings and I relate to those conversations. I remember the Who concert that my brother went to. Remember that Stampede? Um, there was a Who concert, and it was the first of its kind where they went past the chain fence and people were trampled and died.
oh really,
Yeah,
oh
like that main floor kind of effect.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so my brother was scheduled to go Pontiac Silverdome, for those of you in Detroit, and he was scheduled to go to the next concert. They didn't cancel it. And I was like crying. I didn't want him to go. I thought he was going to die. Meanwhile, talk about the era of our parents growing up back then. They let him go. They're like, oh, go have I was the only one worried about it. But Jay Giles' band, he got a rose that was thrown on this up
Oh,
from stage and a pick. But like you have so many subject matters, your cereals that you liked growing up, your
yeah,
music, your cartoons, the TV show. So Annie's talking about like All in the Family and Maude and Good Times. You know, those were they couldn't be on TV today. And yet everybody watched them, right? It
yeah.
was what we all grew up with. So there's so much to look back that's also very fun to start the conversation.
Exactly. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's exactly it. And I really do think, like you just said, it's keeping the cousins together. It's not
Yes.
just the siblings, it's the cousins, and just, continue on the legacy. But you're giving people a way to do it in a fun way to listen. But if siblings will ever listen together, it's an easier way for them to connect together. Like, oh my God, did you hear that episode?
That's a great idea. I never even thought about how it's going to benefit your audience for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think so because like I said, there's so much emotion when, well, selling a parent's house, especially if it's a house that they grew up in. A lot of people hear this, their parents have lived in the same house for 60 years. And so the memories are really, I mean, palpable. Like it's like they walk back into time in these houses and the same
Yeah.
figurines all over. And so there, it really stirs up some good, but also a lot of bad memories if there were, some issues. And I do feel like most of my clients don't still live locally, or not all of them. So
Yeah.
they're walking back into a time machine, and there can be just a lot of frustration how things are handled in general with the house and emptying it, so there's just so much. So to me, bringing class reunion as a resource, like, hey, when this is all done, revisit your past and stir up some good memories because you
Yeah.
guys, I know you had some fun, fun memories back in high school. And yeah, maybe there are some bad ones, but we're focused too much on the bad ones right now because you're going at it with difference of opinions about,
Mhm.
aspects of selling the house. So get back to that fun loving side and laugh about the memories because honestly, we all get so busy, we barely even take time to walk back and figure out what those memories were, like just talking about the music.
Right.
People listen
Right.
to a song on the radio and they kind of might but think about how it impacted with your siblings. Who was playing their music really loud in their room and you were fighting about it, but now it's funny.
And trust me, you're going to uncover stories about each other that you did not know. I mean, there's some classics we've already shared. You talked about something, I think it was in your book, and you also mentioned it on my podcast because I love your book as well. Next Chapter Real Estate.
Oh, thanks.
You talked about like sharing the punch bowl. So there are emotional things in the house that people think one deserves it over the other. But I encourage like the punch bowl to be sent back at the next holiday with a photo. So if your family enjoyed it for Christmas, let's say, put it in a box and put your picture of your family with it, like the traveling pants. Remember that?
Oh my gosh, Leanne, that's a brilliant idea.
You started it. I thought that is such a good idea, and that doesn't require a lot. It's just a photo, but you can see the joy of the family enjoying it, and then it goes to the next holiday, and then they put their, I just think that that's a clever way to
That's
not.
actually, I think now I'll actually bring it up that we should find one item that they should rotate every year because what Leon's
Yeah.
referring to is the punch bowl. I had clients years ago that were arguing over a punch bowl, like who got it. And no one
Yeah.
wanted to sell it because everyone thought they deserved it or wanted it because the memory was so strong around it. And so we came up with the idea that, hey, let's rotate. And I think we even pulled names out because there was three siblings and who got it first. So we'd pull numbers like 1, 2, 3 because they were all so digging their heels in about it. And so, they would have to share it. One person would get for 1 year and then the next person. But I
Yeah.
love your idea with adding a picture saying, and it could actually, I mean, I'm really going to bring that up as an idea that people should do, even if no one really cares about one item. Let's just pick
Right.
an item and do it because then it's also
Yeah.
a connection. And then it could be a funny little tradition of all your families. And after all these years, you have all these pictures of where it's like the traveling pants, like you said. Where was
Yeah.
the punch bowl?
Yes, or jewelry. That's always another big
Oh,
one right
yeah.
here. And, so what if like on someone's wedding day, then have her wear the ring that was mom's
Yeah.
keepsake or something, or put it on a necklace? Like, I think there's so many ways to just let the siblings borrow things for special occasions, takes away that tug of war.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah, that you just created even a step above my sharing.
Well, you're like a realtor slash psychologist though, because they're social worker, because you do deal with a lot. So I wish I knew you when I was going through all of that with my dad. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's sad because I feel like there are a lot of realtors out there that, help in these situations that really don't get it.
No,
I was just talking to someone
no.
else. It's very rare for me to go and be interviewed for a listing that's an inherited property. I can't remember the last time I didn't get that as a listing. Even I just had one very recently that they had already interviewed three other realtors, and they were kind of digging their heels in about someone that only sold in that neighborhood. And then one sibling said, you know what, I think we should interview Annie because this is all she does. And they all were like blown away by my perspective on it because it was so different. And my goal is still to get them the most money out of that house sale. I'm not sitting there, just being so nice to everybody, but
Right.
I get
There's a purpose.
competitive.
Yeah.
But there are so many different angles in these situations that most realtors don't acknowledge. And none of the other three had prior to me going in. And they were like, holy cow. So
Well,
I always get a little possessive that I need to be there if it's an inherited property.
oh, 100%. And just the skill you have on language, which I didn't follow or use, because we were in a panic situation of COVID, and we wanted, our realtor kept saying, because it's an older house. You got to get rid of a lot of this stuff. You have to stage it and clean it up. Well, the guy's unexpectedly having to go to assisted living. So emotionally, you're dealing with that change, which wasn't his choice, right? He had horrible Parkinson's. And then I did exactly what you said not to do, which is you're not going to need that. You're not going to need that. Don't worry about that. You don't have space for that. I said that. I mean, we had a scale of his room, and so that he could visualize what he could and couldn't bring. But I can't tell you how many times I said, you're not going to need that. Don't, and you were right in like even teaching that skill of language of, it's such a huge change for them. How you choose your words to downsize matters.
Yeah, they really, really don't want to be told what to do, how to do
Yes.
it, where to spend their money, any of how, if they
Yeah.
should drive or not drive by their child. I'm kind of going through it with my parents. They're both, in their mid 80s and sort of having some memory issues. And I literally am like having to remind myself because you love your parent, or whether even you love them or not, your interest is to keep them safe. You want to keep your
Yes.
dad safe because he was not able
Correct.
to care for himself, and you're just like, let's just get this done as fast as possible. But from your dad's perspective, he's like, who the heck are you to tell me where I have to live, what I can bring, what I can't bring, and so it's not to
Yes.
say you weren't doing what you thought was right. But in my book, I do talk about that, like try and bring in a third party, whether it's a professional, like a senior move manager, or just a third party, the realtor, but the realtor has to kind of know what they're doing, in
Yeah.
terms of the languaging, but, or just bringing in, a third party friend. So it's
Yes.
not that family connection because it really can get, acrimonious. And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had a situation where they wanted to write their children out of the will. And it's like,
Oh,
who's
we've
going to
had
help?
those
Like,
conversations too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, Leon, I could go on and on and talk to you, but I am just so thrilled to have connected with you and met you. And I just am so excited to share your podcast with everybody and anyone, but especially my clients. So
Oh,
really
thank you. And
appreciate
this
what you're
shows a
doing.
crossover of like connections in
Yeah.
general matter as well, because who would have thought, right? Of both of our worlds colliding and helping one another. Like I'm thankful to have met you, and on a level of knowledge, but on a personal level. And so I do encourage people to take the time to get to know whoever they run into, because you just never know.
Never know. I love
Never know.
that. Yay, Leanne. Well, all your contact info is below so people can reach out and find you on social media and your podcast link. But I really love what you're doing. So thank you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.